Hi, welcome to Tech Leader TV. I'm your host, John Thomas Flynn, and this is our 11th season of TLTV, and we continue with a stellar lineup of topics and guests, a live streaming video webcast and cable television program focusing on public sector information technology and the political landscape. We come to you today courtesy of our sponsors, Veeam, Tanium, Gigaman, Advanced Onion, IP Solutions, LexisNexis, Carasoft, and our newest sponsor, Akamai, one of the world's largest and most trusted cloud delivery platforms. And finally, Flynn Associates, a California certified small business enterprise and trusted advisor for strategic IT business development, marketing, and solution services. And thanks for watching. The Tech Leader TV website continues to set new audience records. We're reaching thousands of state IT decision makers and vendor partners who recorded 250,000, a quarter of a million page views last month alone. We recorded over 2.5 million views in 2017, a new record, and we expect new traffic records in 2018 as well. And we have a very special program today with our guest, Marybel Batjer, Cabinet Secretary of the California Government Operations Agency, endearingly referred as CalGovOps, I should say. Secretary Batjer was appointed by Governor Brown in 2013 to serve as the first ever Secretary of CalGovOps. The agency was established as part of Brown's comprehensive overhaul of state government and is responsible for administering state operations including procurement, real estate, human resource, and information technology. Prior to her appointment, Marybel served as an executive for Caesars Entertainment, the world's largest gaming entertainment conglomerate. Before joining Caesars, Batjer held senior leadership positions for 2 different state governments, as well as key advisory roles in 2 U.S. presidential administrations and at the Pentagon. She was Cabinet Secretary to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and prior to that, she was Chief of Staff to Governor Kenny Quinn of Nevada. She has also served as Undersecretary of the California Business, Transportation, and Housing Agency, where we met when I was the state's first CIO in the last century. Likewise, coincidentally, we both served in the George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan administrations and at the Pentagon. She served as President's Special Assistant for National Security Affairs and as Deputy Executive Secretary of the National Security Council and as an Assistant to Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger and Deputy Secretary of Defense Frank Carlucci. Quite a backroom, huh? Should be a great show. Well, as usual on Tech Leader TV, we're going to continue to do our best to keep the spotlight on the state's management of its annual multi-billion-dollar IT investment, whatever it really is, to make government more efficient and more effective and secure. And hopefully we'll have a little fun and keep your interest at the same time. Our motto is simple, as I'd like to say, California can always do better. Let's begin the journey now with our discussion on technology, government, politics, and as I like to say, other unnatural acts. I'll be right back with our guest in just a moment, and we'll get started. Hi, and welcome back to Tech Leader TV. And Marybel, welcome to Tech Leader TV.
Thank you, John
Glad to
Thomas.
have you. I was
Thank
complaining it took a year and a half to get the Lieutenant Governor to come on the show, but I think you took 4.5 years to finally agree to come on.
You shouldn't complain about these things, John Thomas.
Well, that's because that just shows you how important you are, I think. But we're very glad to have you, and we were actually talking earlier with some of the crew about your background and staff, about your background, and I've laid it out something. But one thing I'd like to know, and I know there's Rick Ahern passed this along to me, that your penchant for government service, I mean, I understand it's in the blood, it started with your family. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up?
Sure. Rick Ahern being a mutual friend of ours. Yeah, my father was on the Nevada Supreme Court, and my mother was a school teacher. And my father's sister, my Aunt Helene, was a pioneer woman in the State Department. She went into the State Department from a little town in Nevada, Smith Valley, after graduating from the University of Nevada, and she became an Eastern European expert. She was caught in Berlin during the Berlin airlift, and did most of her service in the behind the Iron Curtain, as we used to say. She was quite an extraordinary person. My sister was in the United States Navy, an officer, was the first woman to teach at West Point, first woman officer to teach at West Point. A lot of school teachers, but my family really raised us to believe that public service was really the most noble thing one could do. And I've always felt that. I don't think I had to be taught that. I was demonstrated by my family. So I was very fortunate.
Yeah, similar in my case. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and my father was in the State Department.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Had a great appreciation for federal service and public service.
Yep.
And of course, back in those days in the 60s with Kennedy, et cetera, was seemed like the thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it still is the thing to do.
Well, you're now the first secretary of CalGovOps. Tell us a little bit about that organization first.
Okay, sure.
As a result of the consolidation.
GRP2, as it was called, the Governor's Reorganization Plan 2. And basically it consolidated exactly what the title means, those things that help operate, those entities that help operate government. So we have 11 departments now. When the governor did the reorganization plan, we really had 9, but we've grown, and I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, we have 11 departments, and the 3 controlling departments, we all hate that name, but it's one that is referred to, are the CalHR, all the personnel policies and practices within the state, and Department of General Services, that's our real estate, procurement arm, auditing arm of the state, and then Department of Technology, which is our IT procurement as well as IT oversight of all IT projects in the state. So, and telecommunications. So those are the 3 controlling departments, and then we have revenue departments, revenue collecting departments, Franchise Tax Board, and the newly formed out of BOE, which is the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. That just came into GovOps this last fall. Actually, it came in July 1, excuse me. And we did the transition of CDTFA out of GovOps, as well as something else that was formed at the same time, which is the Office of Tax Appeals, which is independent, but GovOps ran that transition. And then we have the Office of Administrative Law. All the regulations flow through the Office of Administrative Law. We have State Personnel Board. We have the, I chair the Building Standards Commission as well as Victims Compensation Board. So we have those things that help run government as well as help the citizens in terms of how government functions.
I noticed that in the governor's message when he moved forward with the consolidation was to have the government become more effective, more efficient, and also to become more tech savvy. I think those were kind of like the performance goals that you were to be measured by, according to some of the speeches then. And it's really interesting to me, particularly when you start talking about the efficiencies. There's some hamstrings to it, particularly in California, which you might not have in other places. One being the unions and the fact that if you're going to make things more efficient, if you're going to consolidate data centers, or you're going to go full board into cloud computing, et cetera, it can really affect jobs. But it's very difficult to use that as part of the parameters when you're dealing in California, right? I mean,
no, I don't agree with you at all.
Do you think you can actually downsize?
Well, first of all, let's get back to your question. You're talking about efficiencies. I don't use the word efficiencies when I talk about what we do at GovOps. I talk about effective processes. And I don't think of the unions as hamstringing me in any way or anything that we do at GovOps. I don't. They're a partner of ours. And we have within the CalHR world, the director of CalHR is the governor's negotiator with the unions, and we have 21 bargaining units within the state of California. And they're a very solid and good partner. In terms of how technology is impacted, we have done I think some very good things in partnership with the unions that have increased their ability to have greater membership and increase our ability to bring and recruit more tech personnel into state government and not contract as much of the operations of state government in the technology world out. We want to grow really good technology careers within state government, and we've made great strides in that direction.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about
Yeah.
the civil service reforms. As a matter of fact, I think that's really a major accomplishment for sure. But let's talk about the organization again, because I have to say, the reorganization did not occur without some controversies, and in particular, from our standpoint, the royal we, Tech Leader TV, was the absorption of the California Technology Agency into government ops. And obviously, you remember when I was state CIO, I had a staff of 15 people, and it was a very small organization. It took years and years and years until, frankly, Terry Takai came on, that they really forced that consolidation of the technology departments and made it a real super agency like it was, probably the strongest CIO position in the country at the time. And then more and more states started to follow that, and the CIOs became cabinet secretaries as well. But how do you think that's worked out?
The reorganization?
The reorganization in terms of the
Beautifully.
CIO
Absolutely
reporting to
beautifully.
you as opposed to being on the cabinet.
The CIO also reports into the governor's office, but no, it's worked beautifully. Amy Tong is a superstar. She's a superstar in terms of her technology knowledge, and she's a superstar in terms of her ability to manage and treat people well and manage people well. She's fantastic. The vendor community is appreciative of her. We will not have a failed IT project under the leadership of Amy Tong. We will not.
Ooh, that's a strong statement.
I can make it. I believe it.
Well, good. That's good to hear. All right, let's move over now and talk about some of these things that they're big on our mind. When you're just in your management style, I always remember our old boss Ronald Reagan. I think he used to quote Lao Tzu and said, "You govern a great nation like you cook a small fish. Don't overdo it." How do you got, from my recollection, or at least from my review and research, you've got like 19,000 employees, I believe, in your multi, probably more than that now that you're
almost 20,000.
Yeah.
With the addition of CDTFA, which is an addition of about 4,200 people, we grew from about 16,000 to nearly 20,000 now.
And so how do you, what's your management style? How do you handle that?
Well, I don't manage personally 20,000 people, John Thomas, for starters. But my management style is, I hope, very open. I think one of the best things you can do in life, and one of the easiest things you can do, is go to work every day being happy and cheerful and kind. You quoted Ronald Reagan. I often quote Colin Powell. Is how important and how neglected kindness is in the workplace. And so I think it's important to have a positive work environment. I think it's very important to hear people, to listen to people. I am only as good as the people that work with me, and I am made better when they're their best and we perform as a unit together. I prefer not to use the I pronoun and use the we pronoun, because we're a team. And I feel that way about the departments that are within GovOps. And 4 of the departments are independent boards. I didn't mention earlier that CalPERS and CalSTRS are among the departments and boards in GovOps. But constitutionally and statutorily, frankly, CalPERS could tell me to go pound sand. They don't, but they could. And CalSTRS statutorily can. They're very independent, but we're very collaborative with them when it comes to proposing their budget to the legislature, as well as working on a lot of legislative bills. Same is true with the State Personnel Board. It's independent. Franchise Tax Board, independent. But all of the independent boards within GovOps attend my monthly meetings. I have one-on-one meetings with each of the leaders often. So I hope it's an open style. I hope it's a fair style. I hope it's one that brings about collaboration among all of the colleagues within GovOps.
Right.
And I hope it's a friendly style, welcoming of ideas, welcoming of good thoughts.
Sounds good. I'm ready to sign up. I know that. Well, let's go back now to the HR civil service issue. That was quite an account. Tell us the Let me just mention one of the things I read. It was about the timesheet you were given, like the first month you were back on the job.
Yeah.
You still get a timesheet to sign every month?
I do. We haven't. That's actually a technological issue, which I'll talk to you about.
Good.
But yeah, I do, unfortunately. But we're going to get there. Among the controller and CalHR and Department of Technology, we will get there. But we started Civil Service Improvement, CSI, early in my tenure. And it wasn't the first of attempts to reform the HR systems and processes within state government. So I don't want to mislead folks. It was really a follow-on of other reforms that had taken place before, like HR Mod 1 and some of the earlier reorganizations that were included in GRP 1 prior to the formation of GovOps. But civil service improvement is just that. We've got to improve the processes of our civil service. And we've made great strides. It's archaic. 3 years ago, much of what was done was paper-based. You literally looked online, tried to find a job online, but to actually apply for it, it was take your piece of paper and mail it, stamp, envelope. And we have, and exams, which are very foreign for people from the private sector and people coming right out of college, that you have to take an exam to enter in the public service. So that we have made some strides in changing and modifying as well. But really, John Thomas, from beginning to end, from someone looking for a job in state service to actually submitting a resume to that entity, having taking an exam which is required, being interviewed, being graded, and then being on a list and being reachable on this list, and then finally walking in and you're greeted with come to work at 8 and leave at 5, and here's your cubicle and it's gray and there's no natural light, and welcome, here's a PC that's 5 years old on your desk. That's the way we were managing. And if you want to change jobs in state service, that was onerous as well. If you wanted to devise a ladder, a career ladder for yourself, that was difficult. If you're looking for a job from outside government, we use titles, working titles even, let alone classifications that make no sense to anyone on the outside. So we don't have a normal nomenclature. So we've reformed every bit of the process I just said has changed, where we have gone from a largely paper-based to a largely online-based application and even testing. We're not 100% there yet. We have reform some of the exam processes that we do. In other words, it's not like an exam like yes, no. It's more of a statement of your experience that you prepare and submit. In many classifications, not all. We have opened up for the outside some of our classifications. The highest managers in state service are the Career Executive Assignment Managers, CEAs. In the federal government, we had SESs. This is the equivalent in state government of CEAs. They're the backbone of our government. They're the folks that keep us running from administration to administration, the real professionals. Well, it used to be that you only could be appointed into a CEA position if you had career status. In other words, you had been a civil servant. That makes no sense in many categories because we need to bring talent that we don't have or we haven't grown in state government into state government. So we worked with the legislature and we reformed that, and in statute now you can become a CEA without having a state service. And again, the unions partnered with us on that as well. So we've made it so we can recruit faster, we can recruit more broadly, we can get people into service quicker. It doesn't take six months to a year to actually get in your seat in your little cubicle. We're designing office space differently. Really? We've had some really interesting things that we've done to make the office more agreeable to a newer entry into state government.
I also seem to recall there was a major consolidation of job classifications, particularly
we've done quite a bit, and I'll talk about the IT classification consolidation, which is really exciting. But When we started down the path of CSI, there were 4,100 classifications in government. Now, what does that mean? That means that every one of those classifications has to have an exam for someone to enter into that classification. An exam can cost a department, if it's a department-specific classification, that's why we have 4,100. It's crazy. If you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer, you know? But DFEH has its own lawyer, and the tax attorneys are their special lawyers. You can fly a qualification application with being specific about a lawyer being a tax expert or expert in tax or having a master's in tax law. You don't have to have a specialized classification, but that's what we've done over time. So after all of this, we have a lot of department-specific classifications, and we're trying to consolidate them down to enterprise-wide classifications, broad classifications, like I just gave you as an example.
So are there direct numbers that came out
Yeah,
of
there were
this?
4,100 classifications in state government. We're down to the low threes now, 3,000. Okay. And some of those, frankly, were classifications, low-hanging fruit, that just hadn't even been used, but they were still in the books. Yeah. And so we had a very exciting approval by the State Personnel Board of our IT classifications. And there were 37 classifications in state government, and 36 actually, and we took it down to 9.
In the technology.
In the technology world.
Yeah, that's what.
And
that's
they've
what
been trying. We've been trying to do it since 1998. I've got to give a lot of people credit for years of attempting to consolidate it. But under CSI, we actually did it. It took a lot of work. We had a lot of partners in the effort. But we had phraseology in the applications that doesn't even make any sense in today's technology. We had inflexibility within the classification. People couldn't transfer easily from one department to another because some of the departments, frankly, had done some workarounds and had done some things within their classification systems and exams that made it difficult. So we've moved it to 9 and we've modernized it. Amy Tong worked very closely and her team with CalHR's team. We had SMEs, subject matter experts throughout state government, some of the AIOs, some of the CIOs, and others that worked on this classification package to make it so it was more flexible, more inviting to new talent coming in, and so we can grow our talent that's in state government. So it was a big deal. It impacted or affected 10,000 people.
Right, yeah. Just in the IT shop,
yes,
right?
Just in that one consolidation.
That number is fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Nobody knew there were over 10,000. I was shocked when I saw that. It's $1 billion a year, probably, in
probably,
real numbers,
maybe.
You know?
I don't know. Haven't looked at that, but yeah.
That's a big deal. Didn't I just read where your HR director or whatever they are now, deputy director,
There's
left?
director, no. Richard Gillihan is the director. He was recruited to become the CFO at CalPERS.
Yes,
but
right.
For a variety of reasons, he chose not to accept that appointment. And
it's good to know because a little was in the paper that he had. That
was a while ago.
Yeah, it was.
You got to get on your current news, John Thomas.
Hey, this is a big show. You know, that crack research staff of mine, they're in trouble now.
And that, see yourself looking back in that mirror, I know.
Yeah. So, civil service reform, and I know, and I was surprised to learn, I was able to go online into the new stage process. StageGate. I always want to say Stargate. The PAL, Project Approval Lifecycle, and all that. I noticed where there's actually a enterprise HR system in the planning stages.
There is.
Which is interesting because, as you recall, the old 21st century project from the bygone days of the controller's office, 22nd century project, we called it on the show because it was so unsuccessful. And delayed
that wasn't very kind of you.
I know, but we're not kind. We're not kind people here on Tech Leader TV. You've got to understand that.
You gotta
we
turn
rib
that
people
corner.
from time to time. We maintain a sense of humor.
So maybe that's why it took 4 years for me to come on the show, John Thomas.
That's right.
Just saying.
So far, it seems like you've been worth it every year. But anyway, so there's a new HR system, because that was supposed to be HR payroll, but now it's going to be an HR system run out of, I assume, government ops.
Well,
arena?
we're still working through some of the principles and the governance of it.
Yeah, it's early stage. It was stage one.
Yeah.
Stage
We're
one.
still writing the business plan. So, but where we want to get ultimately, and Betty Yee has been fantastic about this. Our state controller and Richard Gillihan, our director of CalHR, and Amy Tong, our director of technology, and myself have been working on this. And but where we want to go is we want each individual employee to basically manage their own file, just like you do in so many other parts of your life today, where you you as a taxpayer, you now can manage your own tax file. You can go in and see where it is. You can set up in your retailing space. You can set up different files for keeping track of your retailing. We do that with our playlists.
Oh, yeah, this is old technology,
it's
frankly.
old technology. Well,
it's new for the state.
We won't. No, but where I'm trying to go, though, is we want employees to be able to look at what training courses they've taken, what training courses they may need to take, to get to that next step in their career ladder. We want them to be able to change their W-2 if they want to. And we want that file to always be with them from job and department to department. And we will get there, including having our timesheets all electronically done, which they are in many places in state government. We're just not 100% yet, because it is a technology issue, and had we been successful earlier with earlier attempts in the HR IT area, we probably would be by now. But at any rate,
it takes a while. It takes a while to change these things. I mean, believe it or not, when I was CIO, I tried to get vendors electronically paid.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I know.
Was I nuts? I said, in Massachusetts, you couldn't even be a state vendor unless you got paid electronically.
Yeah.
So we took a tour of the controller's office a few weeks ago with our camera team, our crack camera team. And they're still bailing out. They spend like $20 million a year on stamps.
Yeah, and we're working hard to turn that around and have more electronic.
Well,
filing.
Let's move over to the technology side again.
Sure.
That was one of the things that, as a matter of fact, we have here with us a governing magazine, state government employee of the year, one of a half a dozen or so. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's a governing
was
magazine.
A shocker.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not often when you absorb. When you assume a position like you have, when putting a consolidation and trying to hit the ground running, it's very, very difficult. So I think from what I've heard, you'd enjoy it. You deserve it. Okay?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So talk about technology. You mentioned you don't think there'll be a failure of an IT project on the current Amy Tong's watch.
I don't.
You think we're now, so the state now can do IT. What's different?
We have totally reformed our IT procurement processes and principles. So we moved from the waterfall type of methodology to the agile type of methodology.
Across the board?
All of our new projects will be. So those that are inceptions, for example, how we thought about the multiple complicated both track and trace and seed to sale processes within cannabis, within the recreational and medicinal cannabis. We went to an agile form of procurement that worked marvelously. Most importantly, our first was a demonstration project, I call it, it still really is, was our welfare system, new system. So child welfare system, new system, CWSNS as we refer to it as. And frankly, they came to me, Code for America, Jen Palka, and the former federal technologist, CIO, Todd Park. I had been trying to do some work with them, particularly Jen and Code for America, and she was taken back to help with ACA as Todd was, and I think they saved it for President Obama, and they were pretty busy. So anyway, when they returned to California, they knocked on my door and they said, we really need to talk to you about an IT project that we're fearful is going to be a failure. And I said, I'm all ears. And so I brought in, at the time, the Undersecretary of California HHS, Mike Wilkening, and because the project was child welfare, it's not in my agency, but technology was. Amy was not yet the director. And they, within the welfare department, they had a really good success working with Code for America on SNAP, on the food stamp program. And so the director was very familiar, Will Lightbourne, with the work of Code for America. And so he had reached out wisely to Code for America and said, I need one of your top folks to come and read the RFP that we're about to put out on the street for Child Welfare Services new service. This had been in the works for 7 years. We had had 3 rounds of RFPs. We were in the 3rd round, 7 years. The federal government had threatened to shut us down, to fine us. The counties.
The RFP was supposed to be released on my watch in 1998.
Well, that was attempt 1 or 2. So the counties were desperate for a new system. So everyone was in great need. The federal government, the state, and the counties who we really are serving with Child Welfare Service. And the most unfortunate of our population, those children that are in great need of our social services and welfare services. So they did. And that's what Jen and Todd came to talk to me about with the young man that read the proposal, Dan Hahn, brilliant guy from Great Britain. And Dan basically said in an hour discussion with me, proved to me that we were walking down another failed project. And he said, however, we're not just here to tell you how you're feeling. We're going to tell you how you can succeed. Okay. So
and that led to the whole agile approach.
That led to the whole agile approach.
And that project is moving. It's like I was talking to Bill Maley, who's the PIO over there. It's like a combination of Lollapalooza, and I mean, there's people who are having a ball over there. I just went over there.
In fact, when I mentioned the redesigning of an office, we redesigned their office to be at a very open working space, so people feel like they're walking into Salesforce in San Francisco or something.
So they are. It's been going gangbusters. I'm assuming everything's. I know there's been some personnel changes, but everything's
going. I mean, we've had some corrective actions we've had to take. I don't mean that formally, I mean it informally. But for the most part, it's going well. But what we've learned from that, as I said, we applied it in cannabis, and we just have been working in the area of motor voter with DMV, getting ready for the primaries in June. And again, an agile approach is the approach we're now taking with all of our IT programs.
Even that big, the new MMIS, the Medicaid Management Information System, is going to be agile too. I know that the RFP is.
It will be. Yeah, and so to that point, the RFP did not go out on the street. Correct. We pulled it back. It was supposed to go out right after Thanksgiving in 15. Was it 15 or 16? 15.
2015.
And then under Agile and under the whole new approach, setting up the war room in our conference room, we put out the first RFP, and we module. These were all modules as per the Agile approach. First RFP went out the 21st of December. 3 weeks, not 3 years.
Yeah, very
Second
impressive.
one went out in January. Third went out in March. So. And as I said, we've had some corrective. It's a demonstration project. We're learning along the way, but it's good.
Well, just remember, that was
I want to say one thing that's really important, John Thomas, is that not only did the state learn, and have we been able to populate that knowledge throughout state government, but the vendor community learned.
Oh, I know.
The vendor community.
You can always tell when the vendor community is upset, you're probably going in the right direction. Particularly, particularly some of the larger firms that weren't used to this kind of approach.
Well, they hadn't done it. They had in some narrow areas. But if you talk to some of them now, they've totally reworked their business plan. A couple of them realized their culture couldn't be changed that quickly. Right. And so they acquired agile companies.
I'm a firm believer.
Like Ford was acquired by Accenture. Yeah. That's a good example. But there've been others.
As you know, I mean, there's been a litany and of projects over the forever, going back forever. Yeah. And so it's good to make some kind of an adjustment, even if it doesn't work. No, keep changing. Don't do the same thing over and over again.
And the vendor community is right there with us, and it's been great. It's been great.
Okay.
I think some more quickly than others.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good to know. I'm glad that I'm glad that project seems to be is working out, because I've actually been over there a couple times to some of their events that they've had.
Good.
And yeah, like you say, the eyes of a lot of people are following this thing, and it's good to hear that it's going to be adopted in some other ones. I would that it could have been adopted perhaps for Fiscal, because I'm very concerned about Fiscal being a successful implementation, which will probably be after this current administration leaves.
Full implementation, yeah.
So.
Full implementation.
So Agile, you had the civil service reform in technology, and one of the things that, one of the big areas that, there's always regulatory reform and procurement reform. And I know that what's interesting about the procurement reform was splitting off the technology piece to the California Department of Technology and with the DGS procurement office. But I also know that there's been a lot of work done, and this was a compliment I heard from one of our sponsors, CrowdStrike. There has been for years a difficulty in getting very active procurement schedules that can fit into the needs that the state has. For example, I'd heard that the success of the procurements, I should say, the procurements of the marijuana-related, and there were like 4 or 5 different IT systems. But I wanted to pass along some congratulations to you that we heard that if you hadn't gotten directly involved in the whole procurement thing, that never would have happened before the end, January, was it July 1st or?
January.
January 1st,
January
right.
1st, 2018.
Would never have happened because you set up people were having to piggyback on CMAS and the software licensing agreement, but you actually got directly involved and sped that process up at least 12 months. So congratulations.
Well, we had to, thank you, but I didn't do it alone.
Now you need to do the same thing for security.
Well.
Poor Peter Liebert out there is pulling his hair out.
Peter's doing fine. Peter is not pulling his hair out.
Well,
he doesn't have any hair to pull out. He's bald. He shaves.
Well, that's what happens. Take that job for a couple of years and see what happens to you.
He's doing fine.
Well, I'm just saying that the vendor community is concerned because they're having difficulty. They don't have the proper vehicles to expedite things, and security is one of those things where you really have to move quickly on it. In fact, that's one of the things I wanted to ask about security. The whole issue of cybersecurity is such a huge matter to not only private, not only public government, obviously everywhere. In
our personal lives as well as our public
And there was some big, there was a big concern a couple years ago at a legislative hearing is how much does the state spend on cybersecurity, and nobody knew the answer. And so you can go to the federal government and the $4 trillion budget, and you can find out that there's $80 billion IT and $18 billion budgeted for cybersecurity. So can't do that in the state of California.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Maybe you can't, but we can.
How do you do it?
Well, we know exactly how much we spend on cybersecurity in the following departments: the military department, Department of Technology, the CHP, and what did I say? Okay, military department, CHP, Department of Technology, and the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We know exactly what we spend.
Okay. How about the under 135?
The what?
The other 135 departments.
No, we know. We know.
Well,
yeah, we know.
Actually, I'm not giving you a hard time about this. I'm just saying that I know that the
those are the oversight and the most important departments when it comes to cybersecurity.
When I was CIO, I asked, how do you know we're spending $2 or $3 billion a year on IT? And Craig Brown, or his predecessor, I think it was, told me, we do a survey once a year. And that's how we know.
Okay, John Thomas.
Now,
when
were
you CIO? When were you CIO? What year?
96 to 99.
Okay.
95, 99.
And what year is it now? Do you think we've made some changes?
All I can say is once a year, a survey is put out. It's not done by finance now. It's done by the California Department of Technology.
But that's a different
asking
survey.
for a spending reconciliation of how much has been spent on different things.
It's
not tracked by CalSTARS. It's not tracked by Fiscal.
At another time, we will get you some information and set you straight.
Okay, all right. As we say on Tech Leader TV, we can always do it better, right?
Yeah,
we can always do it better.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, that's it. Because I think everybody's waiting for Fiscal that should actually be able to do that. And Fiscal's not here yet. But hopefully when it is here, there's going to be monumental changes to the way the state does work, not to mention how the public can understand where the money is being spent. That's why I think that project is so critical. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I got procurement reform. We talked about fiscal. What's your next challenge?
My next challenge?
You said you got a lot to do before the
that's
end
exactly
of this
it.
administration. What are you focusing on?
I walk out the door with Jerry Brown, so I've got to make sure that those things that we have started, particularly some we've talked about today, civil service improvement, we have a lot more class consolidation that we need to do. The IT classification in January was a huge victory, and we have many more behind it that are as important. We have to make sure that our systems at CalHR, CalCareers, and ECOS are fully functional with the end user smack dab in the center of everything they do. We have to continue with the IT procurement reform. We have some undertakings at Department of General Services that are extremely important. We're building 2 new state buildings. We haven't done that in years. And
maybe a third from the reports this week about the annex, right?
Well, maybe. I'm focused on the 2 buildings that the governor has accepted and pushed forward. So we have a lot of undertakings that we've got 10 months to just make sure we run the tape, as I say.
I have a quick little story for you here. This is, CalSTRS. Basically, fiscal is we're going to replace CalSTRS. CalSTARS.
CalSTARS, not CalSTRS. CalSTRS is the teacher's pension fund.
Do you know who was the brainchild of CalSTARS?
No.
Your old boss.
Casper Weinberger.
Casper Weinberger.
When he was Department of
Isn't that funny?
Of Technology.
Yeah, it makes sense though when you think about it. Right about that time frame. That's how old that system was. It's 30 years old back when, when I was there. So that would make all the sense in the world.
Yeah, that's a long darn time ago.
Yeah. Well, it's as I said, it's the whole issue of transparency, which we like a lot of lip service to, and a lot of people are doing things about. There's probably no more transparent project in the state of California right now than CWDS. I mean, it's incredible. They even have, slideshows and movies and guest speakers. I was just over there with a woman that was artificial intelligence that they're utilizing to predict whether a child needs to be screened for foster care. Real serious
really
stuff.
Important.
You never thought it was
all of even child welfare system, new system is serious stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because at the end of that, the end user is that child. The end user is the social worker who's helping that child.
70,000 children are in foster care in California. 70,000.
But that system takes care of many more than 70,000.
Oh, of course. These are just the ones that are actually in foster care. But the cases, you're right, the cases are hundreds of thousands, and it's very sad. They, talk about a population in danger.
And great need.
Yeah, so it certainly needs a system that works.
We cannot make mistakes with.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about life and death in
you are.
many of these
You're
cases,
talking about proper placement in the proper home and whether a child gets fed, everything.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we've just about run out of time.
Wow.
It's been really great having you on the show.
I'm not sweating yet, John Thomas.
Well, you took a few punches and you gave a few, so that's only fair. We've been very, very excited to have you on the show. Really haven't. I want to thank everybody for watching. We've got some great programs lined up for the next couple shows, next couple months, including. Peter Liebert, we've got an invitation out for him to be on the show, and Mr. Rogers from OTEC. I think those are both under yours. And we also got the Secretary of State has been invited. We're negotiating with them to come on, and we're still trying to get the artificial intelligence. The data analytics guy from the Sacramento Kings we're trying to get him on the program. So it should be a great season. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Great. Thank you.